Unpacked, the podcast that examines how technology is reshaping business and our world, with this season unpacking the topic of generative AI. This show is produced by Think Tank at Lab 45, Wipro's Innovation Lab. My name's Stuart Black and I'm joined, as ever, by the voice of the show, Think Tank's innovation lead, Arvind Ravishankar. Arvind, are you well today?
Hey Stuart, doing great.
Good stuff. In a few moments we'll have Arvind's deep dive interview with Mark Donavon, who is head of digital at Nestlé Purina. Arvind, can you just kind of cue us up a little bit about what this one's going to be?
Yeah, so Mark Donavon has spent the last decade working in the areas of innovation and strategy. And he's going to tell us what it really takes to build prototypes using AI and how do you then take it to market and make it a viable solution. Highly relevant for all business leaders today because everybody is now experimenting with AI. And Mark is a pioneer in this space where he's actually built products using AI and taken them to market, right? So it's going to be rich. It's going to be rich.
Real world stuff. And sticking with the real world, we're going to look at a couple of stories now that are hitting the headlines. The first one from here in the UK is about a program tracking hedgehog populations using AI. This innovative conservation effort aims to understand why numbers are declining and does so by artificial intelligence analyzing images captured across a diverse set of habitats from parks to forests and so on. The data will inform targeted conservation strategies to help reverse the negative trend in the general hedgehog population. Arvind, this sounds like it can only be good news. What's your take?
Oh, it's amazing news. It's amazing news, Stuart. You know, I think I was watching a documentary by World Wildlife Fund, and they show that because of human population and because of our thirst for growth, 30 to 40% of the world's species is currently under threat and in destruction, being wiped out, right? And the prediction only gets worse because there aren't real mitigation measures today. And the more you think about it, the more you start understanding that, yes, you can solve this problem to some degree by human behavioral modifications. But the real challenge is we don't fully understand as human beings the impact we are having in the environment because there's no way for us to model it, right? If you think of the number of variables that exist and the way, the myriad ways in which organisms interact with each other, depend on each other, very difficult for you to pick apart and say, okay, this is what's going on. And this is where I think the ecologist community, the marine biologist communities, these scientists, I think, are going to benefit a lot from AI. AI could be their partner in analyzing how to model these ecosystems around our Earth and how to take intelligent decisions based on ecosystems, right? So I predict that tomorrow, in a few years from now, policies that are written, regulations that are put in place, company decisions will all be informed by this combination of human AI intelligence that models our impact on our planet, right? Personally, I'm super excited about this, right? I think it's only fair that humans give all species a fair chance, right, to survive and thrive. So I'm personally super excited about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big cheer to the organization that's doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's wonderful to see, and it's been on the news here today as well. So it's a story that's captured the imagination. Everyone loves hedgehogs, it seems.
Yes, and Stuart, thank you for highlighting this story. This is such a wonderful story to have in our podcast. I want to thank you and Nathan for bringing this story out. For the folks who don't know, Nathan's behind the scenes helping us through all of this. So Stuart and Nathan love the story.
Yeah, he's there sprinkling on the secret sauce whenever we need him. Thank you, Nathan.
Correct.
So our second story then is a more macro visionary story. It concerns the main message coming out of an interview that Amazon's Vishal Sharma gave to Axios at South by Southwest. Sharma predicted that in the near future, we'll all be using a range of personalized systems built on artificial general intelligence, or AGI. This is a controversial topic. Everyone seems to have a different take on how you define it, but perhaps it could be said to be software with human-like intelligence and or the ability to self-teach. But I'm sure Arvin's going to tweak that definition in a second. Vishal Sharma said AGI will likely be delivered in a series of developments, and pointed to everyone from Amazon, OpenAI, Google, and Meta all racing to be the first to find this holy grail. So Arvin, can you just explain this for us a little bit more? Why is AGI a big deal? Can we unpack it?
Absolutely. And, Stuart, I think the way you define AGI is a lot better than hundreds of people I know who've been defining this, because you hear a spectrum of people's opinions, from AGI is equal to Terminator on one spectrum, right, to the other spectrum where AGI is not that important, and either spectrums are both incorrect, right? But the reason you have that spectrum is this question of what is AGI is almost like asking the question of what is human intelligence. You can, to some degree, you can theoretically define it, but very difficult to really fully define what human intelligence is. And so I'll just go by maybe a conventional definition that's agreed upon, right? So that the business circles understand how the technologists think about it. So essentially, AGI is first a theoretical field of study. It's been a theoretical field of study for a long time. It's where you are able to develop artificial intelligence that is similar to human intelligence, in that human intelligence is what we would call, at the basic, at least till you are in that 11th and 12th grade, human intelligence is general intelligence, where you are able to apply your learnings in many different situations, right? And only after a certain point do you get specialized, right? You have a cardiologist, or you have a marine biologist, but that happens a lot later. In the beginning stages, human intelligence is general intelligence, and artificial intelligence is AGI is to mimic the same thing in AI, right? Initially, AI was trained for very specific tasks. So for example, you would have AI that will only detect cancer, and that's all it could do. It couldn't write a poem for you, or it couldn't summarize text, right? So it couldn't reapply what it's learning in one field in other fields. And the ability for AI to do that is what is broadly AGI, right? It's an artificial general intelligence that can be applied into many different tasks. Now, why is this theoretical, and why suddenly has it gotten all this fame? It's actually because of what OpenAI did. The breakthrough in ChatGPT and GPT-3 and GPT-4 is that when OpenAI was training these models, they started seeing what they call emergent capabilities, wherein they never trained the model to perform certain tasks, but it had learned to do those tasks on its own, based on something else it was trained on. So those are emergent capabilities, right? So those emergent capabilities that it started displaying has what has given us this real boost and energy that maybe we are on the track to AGI, right? The fact that the machine can start learning on its own without necessarily a human being teaching it certain things and being able to apply it in many different tasks. That's the reason why AGI has taken off. And the prediction from most people in this field is that we will reach AGI in about 5 years. So by 2030, 2029, 2030, we would be at AGI, and it'll obviously disrupt the way we live, right? So it's important. So it's important to pay attention to it, but it's also not important to start fantasizing it being Terminator or having consciousness and things like that. Nobody's even talking about things like consciousness or taking over the world. It's about general intelligence. I hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really clearing it up. But let's focus in on what businesses should do to plan for AGI. How will they keep up and make sure they're ready for that new technology?
That's a great question. I think for now, businesses should just plan honestly, Stuart, for AI.
Right, okay.
Because
One
most
step at a time.
businesses, exactly, most businesses are not even ready for AI, right? Or maybe to qualify that a little more, most businesses are not ready for even generative AI, right? And they're wrapping their heads around it. So I would say, as long as you are building AI into your foundational strategy today, you're good. You have some time. You don't have to be concerned about AGI for the time being, right? At least in the near term.
Great stuff. Okay, well, let's hope everyone's ready for both AI, AGI, and whatever may come after that. So, Arvind, can you tell us a bit more about what you're focusing on in today's interview?
Absolutely. I am talking to Mark Donavon, and we are going to dive into how do you determine what AI prototypes and pilot products to build, and then how do you take them to market? His real life experience that would guide a business leader on their AI journey.
Let's do it. So here we go with Arvind's interview with Mark Donavon.
Our think tank focuses on researching emerging technologies that will shape your future. From generative AI to exoskeletons, we study the impact these technologies will have on business, humanity, and our planet. And through our podcast, newsletters, and social media content, we have a direct line to a truly global emerging technology community. So if you'd like to find out more about the impact these technologies will have on your business, then reach out to our team at lab45thinktank.com.
Hi folks, welcome to another episode of Unpacked. In the last 5 to 10 episodes, we've been talking a lot about LLMs, we've been talking about AI hallucinations, we've been talking about deployment of these different generative AI technologies, and we really unpacked a lot about the technology. Today I'm going to go down a different route. Today I'm going to talk about and I'm going to unpack what it takes to actually understand and build prototypes and pilots using generative AI technology. And to do this, I have a really special guest. He has about 20 years of experience working on digital systems, artificial intelligence, and thinking about how to bring out new products and services to market that leverage these technologies from a maker standpoint, right? He has a maker's mindset, he has a pilot prototyping mindset, and that's led him to come out with a lot of new cool ideas for Purina, a very well pet brand that all of us know here. He's been with the company, as I said, for 20 years, and he's the global director for artificial intelligence and digital strategy for Purina. I want to welcome Mark Donavon. Mark, thank you for coming and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, Arvind. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Mark, I'm super excited. The whole pet food, the pet hygiene, and the pet industry is really large. And in fact, as you and I were talking before we jumped into the show, you said there's today or in the next couple of years, dogs and cats are going to reach a volume of 1 billion pets in our planet.
Correct.
That's a big number, right? That's in roughly 1/7 or 1/8 of our population are going to be dogs and cats. Personally, I'm super happy about that because I have 2 dogs and I love them. And there's nothing that brings a smile to your face like a dog or a cat when you come back home, right? Our pets are precious. And you've spent, interestingly, Purina, though is very well known as a pet food company, you have a different role within this company. You're looking at how to bring digital and artificial intelligence to build new products, new types of services for this company. So I'm really excited for having you on our show. So to just kick off, Mark, tell us a little bit about how you got in a couple of words. How did you land up in a pet food company making digital and AI-based products?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've spent much of my adult life living in and around the St. Louis area, and Purina is a company that's well known, headquartered in the area, and so certainly it was an aspiration and an opportunity as a pet lover myself to find my way into this company. Interestingly, I came to Purina after working for a couple of years in Phoenix, Arizona for PetSmart headquarters, where I was responsible for their point of sale system development. And so it was very natural as my wife and I looked to come back to St. Louis to go from one pet focused company into another one that we know and love in our home in St. Louis. And so that's what got us back to the St. Louis area, into Purina. Originally, I came back leading teams, developing software and systems, supporting our R&D organization, but quickly moved into roles where my maker mindset was coming to life in leading development of actual pet food and cat litter products in our core business. And along that journey, over 7 or 8 years of doing food for pets and litter for cats, the technology background that came with me was always in the back of my mind, thinking about how emerging technologies and mobile sensors and signal processing, AI, et cetera, could be applied towards solving problems that I'm hearing in focus groups, pet owners articulating that they've long experienced and haven't had solutions for. And so that became kind of a turning point for me in my career at Purina, where I was able to start articulating a vision for how we might, as Purina, leverage technology in ways that can address these unmet needs and pain points that pet owners have and articulate, veterinarians as well, and also address needs and desires that Purina has to advance our market of nutrition-based solutions for dogs and cats as well.
That's amazing. And Mark, I love that you started with a customer, right? From what you just described, you actually looked at the pain points that pet owners have and then started thinking of how do you apply technology to solve these pain points. So this gives us a really good starting point here for our conversation. You have a maker mindset. And what's interesting today in the generative AI space is that most people today are building pilot programs because generative AI is so pervasive, right? It can be applied in marketing, sales, HR, legal, code generation, so many different areas of your company where you can apply generative AI that it's very difficult to immediately decide that these are the 5 things you want to build and go into production. So there's going to be a plethora of pilot programs that all companies will have to do. And so this maker mindset that you have, I think is going to be highly valuable for most companies. So talk to us about that, right? Talk to us about the maker mindset. How do you even go about, like I see a product behind you, which I'm assuming is an IoT based product. How do you conceptualize these ideas? How do you decide that that's the prototype you want to build? Talk to us a little bit about your process, your thinking, your philosophy of approach.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that. First, I'll tell you what we don't want to do, and something that we wrestle with as well all the time, which is we don't want to start with technology looking for a problem to solve. Right? There's a lot of amazing technology out there, and we could build a lot of things, but the question is, should we build it? And so that refocuses the conversation, the discussion, to say, hey, let's put the technology aside. Let's go look at who we think our target users are that we want to engage. And let's really understand what are the problems that they have that they're looking to solve. And then we can go to technology to say, hey, do we think there's opportunities to apply technology in new ways that can address those pain points, unmet needs, jobs to be done, whatever you want to call them. And so that's very much, I think, the DNA of Purina as a food company. We're very focused on developing and delivering food products that meet the needs of pet owners. Now we've applied this same type of approach. I think of it as human-centered design in our work in this technology space.
And Mark, within that human-centered design, so in your company, do you have a team of consumer researchers, or do you outsource that work and you bring in a firm like IDEO or Frog to do that level of work, or do you do that inside Purina yourself? Where do you get that information from?
All of those are in play. We have as a global pet food company, we operate regionally. And so we have 5 different regions globally. Each has a CEO. They each operate independently. Each of them has a consumer insight team of their own. And each of those teams have agency partners that they work with to do research. And then as well, as we narrow into those of us working specifically in the digital space, we can leverage those teams. We can also reach out to the IDOs or others externally that we might need to do research maybe in more non-traditional ways that our core business might do it.
So could you give us an example of an IoT product recently released, Mark, that leverages AI and some of these new technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll speak specifically to the example you see behind my shoulder, the cat standing in its litter box. If you can see underneath the litter box, there's actually a device. That's an IoT device that launched in North America earlier this year. And the insight behind that advice was that we know that about 80% of cats will experience renal or kidney disease at some point in their lives. And by the time their owners see that there's a problem with the cat and they go to the vet, the disease is usually pretty far advanced. And so we saw an opportunity really to intervene much earlier in helping to understand that something's changing in the cat's bathroom behavior that can correlate to an increased risk of early onset kidney disease, renal disease, et cetera. And so we basically built this device to solve exactly that problem. Vets will tell us that, if I could see that cat 6 months earlier or 12 months earlier, I could have treated the disease. But by the time it comes to me, the cat comes to me, when you see a problem with your cat, that disease is often already destroyed 60 to 80% of the cat's kidney function permanently. And now the vet can't treat the disease. This will be the disease that probably leads to end of life for the cat. And the best the vet can do is manage the symptoms and make the cat comfortable in the time it has. Now with this device, this smart litter box monitoring device, now we're changing the game. We've now created a tool that's never existed before for cat owners, for veterinarians, where we can see changes in the elimination behavior patterns of cats long before the human would notice that something's changing. And then we can interact, alert the pet owner of the change. We can get them to the vet much earlier. We're already seeing many instances of examples from pet owners and vets where they're coming in saying, hey, the device actually alerted me to something I had no idea was happening with my cat. I went to the vet, and yes, the vet diagnosed a urinary infection or some other more serious problem, but now at a much earlier stage while there's time to engage.
And Mark, when you built out this device in the beginning stages, the prototyping stages, right? Where did you get the data? How did you determine if the pet is healthy or not healthy? Did you use machine learning models? Did you use AI-based models? And also, where did you get the data from?
Yeah, the journey started actually while I was leading teams that were developing cat litter products, and so I was spending a lot of time watching cats use litter. As I started thinking about, these cats have very standard patterns. When things are going well, their bathroom patterns don't change. I bet I could measure that. And so I started by building a very simple, low fidelity prototypes where I would put a spring-loaded plate underneath the litter box so that when the cat went in it and compressed the plate, it would close a circuit and write a 1 to a data writer. And then as the cat's moving around and this thing is vibrating, it's just writing 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And when I went back and looked at the data, I saw a bunch of zeros, which meant nothing was happening in the litter box. And then I saw a string of ones. I said, aha, the cat was in the litter box at this time for this amount of time, right? And then I went back to zeros. And that was, I think, the aha for me that, there's a pretty rich set of data, even with that simple prototype. As I was using it in my home with my cats, I could start to tell the story of a day or a week or a month of what normal looked like for my cat in terms of its pattern, just from that simple mechanical type of a prototype. That led us then to think of, if we can learn that much from something that simple, what if we brought other sensors into play in a device? What else could we learn? And so we started building kind of a little bit, additional sets of prototypes, testing different types of sensors, inertial motion sensors, pressure sensors, lots of different types of things to really hone in on what set of commoditized types of sensors in market could we apply in a device like this that would give us the most insight potential for the least cost that we could leverage to address this problem that was always our focus.
This is amazing. So you built a low fidelity prototype. You saw some data which was very promising, insights based on the cat's behavior, and then you started building more sensors into it to see other sorts of data you can get, and you began this positive cycle, right? Almost of insights and data. At what point, Mark, did you start using or start feeding these into some sort of an AI algorithm or model? And did that help? Did AI actually help you figure out
Yeah.
new patterns?
Yeah, in this particular case, and I would say broadly, and smart devices for pets, as you think about other things that maybe at market, smart bowls and smart collars and these kinds of things, there are many out there that others are selling today. Uh, the integration of trained models as part of our intelligence generating system has been transformational, right? Is the example that I described, where I was looking at ones and zeros, that would give me an indication of a pattern of when the cat's in the litter box. But what it didn't tell me is what's the cat doing in the litter box. I couldn't tell that, right? And so the introduction of classical machine learning trained models enabled us to teach the system what a pattern in the litter box of urination looks like versus defecation, or a pattern of the cat digging to find a spot to go to the bathroom, or the pattern of when the cat's done, it's covering the waste, right? All behaviors the cats do. Interestingly, Purina published research, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, identifying it's the first published ethogram of cat elimination behavior. So it's a map of all the behaviors that cats do in the litter box. And surprisingly, we think of urinating and defecating as what cats do in the litter box. That's 2 behaviors out of more than 30 behaviors that our animal behaviorists have been able to show us. Cats do many things in their litter box. And for us, knowing what they're doing and then understanding how those patterns change over time becomes the key insight into really gaining an understanding of how is this cat's health changing now, and what does that mean for the future for this cat.
Mark, this is so awesome. I love this. I love this because your company and you are working on how do you use technology to make the health of the pet better. That's phenomenal, right? That's phenomenal. This is the exact kind of use case that our clients and the world should know about, right? How do you use technology to make something better? And in this case, it's the health of a pet. So these machine learning models you said have been transformational in that you're starting to see new insights, new patterns, which you couldn't have seen before just as a human being. Um, at what point and how did you convince your management that this is important, right? As you were building these models, initially you built a low fidelity model, you drew some insights, then you put more sensors in. All this requires investment, and prototypes and pilots go through that cycle of investments and then more investments and more inputs. And so how did you manage that? At what point did you actually go to your management and say, hey, I have something that I think we should start taking into production?
Yeah, I wish I could go back and rewrite the story to be able to say that I gave a presentation to our Purina executive team and created this vision, and they all bought into it, and they started giving me lots of money to go and build this. Unfortunately, that was absolutely not the case. I spent literally probably the first 2 or 3 years while I was prototyping and learning, talking to a lot of senior people in the company through more of an intellectual conversation, like imagine this, and I would see their eyes roll back in their heads, and the question they would ask is, well, how much pet food is this going to sell? And of course, I didn't have the answer to that question, but that's the question they've been trained to ask, right? As people that make pet food. And it finally it kind of dawned on me one day that, okay, I keep running into this wall, and if nothing changes, I'm just going to continue running into this wall. So what can I do different? And I think the different that I landed on that ultimately started to gain traction was I carved a little bit of money out of my own budget because I wasn't getting the money I was asking for. And I went and started building prototypes, like one, taking it to my house, trying it with my cat and my dog, and acquiring some data. And then I started coming back to this same group of leaders with real data and a story, right? And that was when things started to change, because then it became very real. It wasn't Mark talking about some crazy visionary thing that I don't understand. It was Mark talking about his cat and this prototype device, acquiring this data, and I can see exactly what's going on with the dog or cat through the lens of this pretty simple data, right? And that started to get people, I think, to make them more curious and recognizing, like, okay, there may be something there, and we should start investing more and more on it. And so it's been, honestly, this smart litter box device that I've been talking about, that first prototype is probably something I worked on 10 or 11 years ago. It's taken us that long to work through the journey of getting the world's greatest pet food manufacturing company to try something very different than pet food manufacturing, right? And it's been a very positive story, but as you can imagine, right, a company like ours is going to be very conservative about any decisions it makes to step into a very different, a very foreign product category space compared to its core.
I can understand and see that. And what's amazing is that you actually built it and tested it out with your own pet, right? So the maker mindset, the thinker mindset, I can see that. And I'm as you're describing that story, Mark, what I'm thinking is that enterprise leaders today, because of the speed at which generative AI is moving and how fast it's changing, I think they got to enable more and more people in their company, empower more and more people in their company to go out and build these prototypes to see what works, what doesn't work, right? So, for example, in our company, Wipro, we have 250,000 technologists, and all of them have great ideas. I'm pretty sure each of them has their own ideas. If we empower them to go build something for themselves, I mean, out of the 250,000 people, even if 500 of them build prototypes, I'm sure 5, 10 of them are going to be really, really useful for the company, right? So, this maker mindset, if there's a way we could get that to become mainstream in a company's culture, I think that'll be quite phenomenal. That'll be quite phenomenal.
I
I
agree as well. It's a hard thing for a company that's really good at doing one thing to think about doing something else differently, right?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And what I feel is that in the next 5 years, this will happen not because we want it to happen. It'll happen because it will become a necessity. It's going to be necessary for companies to be able to think outside the box, to develop new ideas, like find new revenue streams, like what you're doing right now with Purina. I think this will become the norm, right? Generative AI is going to disrupt many industries. So, Mark, talk to us a little bit about. So, you built a prototype. You finally sold it within the organization, and I see it at the back. So, I'm assuming it's in the market right now. What's been happening after that? How has the reception been? Are you finding that AI is helping you draw more insights? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the reception has been very positive. The feedback we're getting from the early user audience of this particular system has been overwhelmingly positive. Right, it's reinforcing the plan and strategy for us to continue working on building out a roadmap of additional integrated devices for dogs and cats as well that you'll see coming from Purina in the not too distant future. I imagine things that we're working on, and ultimately, while again we have this focus on all of these products addressing the needs of pet owners so that they can be better pet parents. The selfish ambition that every company has is how does this create value for us as well? And I think we have bought in across leadership that in the pet food business, if somebody understands the health needs of this pet and it's not us, they're probably going to be the ones recommending what food that pet owner should buy. And if that's not us doing that, now we're in a defensive position where we're either going to have to pay to play in that platform, or we're going to have these platforms recommending somebody else's food, a competitor's food. And we've taken the position that we want to own that platform. So not only are we solving pet owners' problems with these products, it becomes then a platform that we can engage people as we build their trust to have a conversation around nutrition or cat litter and make recommendations to them that are personalized to their pet's needs and that keep them or get them into the Purina family of products.
It makes sense, right? And if you, the more and more of these devices you sell, and the more data you get from them, and the more smart your models become, I'm almost thinking that 5 years from now, Purina may have the most intelligent AI model that understands cats better than anybody else, right? And just that particular model, you can take that model and you can license it to all other companies. You can license it to vets. Maybe vets will use that as their co-pilot to start diagnosing cats. I mean, the potential is limitless, Mark. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, as we've kind of tied this model in a way that initially it's fueling our core business, which is what makes us all comfortable because that's what we know and do, right? We are all already imagining what new business model opportunities might this create? What new revenue channels, solution sets for pet owners and veterinarians might this enable?
Oh man, yeah, I can already see 10 of them in my head. This is quite cool, super cool. By the way, I need one for my dogs. FYI, if you haven't started thinking about that, we need one for dogs too.
It's a
Um,
simple problem. You just have to teach your dog to go to the bathroom in a litter box. And
I,
maybe for a Yorkie, that works okay, but for a Great Dane, that might be a little problematic.
it is, and mine is a retriever. Yeah, she's 75 pounds. So Mark, you're using traditional machine learning models to build these. When you started, did you have to build your own ML model, or did you use somebody else's in that prototyping phase? Were you using others' platforms? Talk to us a little bit about how you implemented this.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably 7 or 8 years ago, I didn't know anything about training AI models. It was pretty foreign to me. And as we recognized the need to be able to gain more insight from the data we had and the potential we saw for that, I was inspired by a company called Atlas Wearables, who ultimately was acquired by Peloton, who had had developed a wristband, a wristwatch for performance athletes. And at that time, I owned a CrossFit gym, and I bought it and took it to my CrossFit gym, and I did a workout. And when I was done, I pulled the app up, and it said, "Mark, you just did a workout that consisted of, at this point in time, you were doing pull-ups, and then you were doing box jumps, and then you were doing push-ups, and then clean and jerks. And oh, by the way, your clean and jerk form was pretty bad." And I was blown away because, right, from something I was wearing on my wrist, it just described all of the movements I was doing with high precision. It was counting the reps, and it was telling me how good my form was when I was lifting weights. And I was blown away. And the thought I had in the CrossFit gym was, well, this in the job that pays my bills at Purina, this is exactly the problem I'm trying to solve with dogs and cats. Is I need to understand their behavior patterns and how they're changing over time. Here's a company that's now able to identify my behaviors with high precision. And so we started working with these guys, developing some prototype projects. We worked with them for several years. And in the process, by working so closely with them, we basically learned how to train AI models. And so when they were acquired by Peloton, they, because of that deal, they needed to get out of the pet space, the work they were doing with us. And so we just took the ball and ran with it from there. And we actually stood up a team in our Purina R&D organization that's now almost exclusively focused on building the artificial intelligence, the data scientist trained models, and the expert systems that our behaviorists, nutritionists, physiologists, geneticists are able to create as well. And so now that's an entirely new product development team that exists within our pet food product development organization.
That's phenomenal. And are you also starting to see now that that beyond the traditional ML AI models, the latest architectures are the transformer architecture and the GAN architecture, right? Which has led to generative based AI. Do you see a place for generative AI within your products?
I absolutely do. And I have to, my disclaimer up front is, like many people, I'm just really in the learning mode of understanding generative AI and what's possible, as well as what are the risks associated with using generative AI. And so I think broadly across our portfolio of market-facing digital products, we're imagining a future where generative AI plays an important role. Right now, we're in the place where we're working to understand what might that role be, and as well, what are the limitations or risks associated with models making recommendations and models that we didn't train. So, right, and so as an example, if you imagine somebody going to Purina.com where we're making food recommendations for you, and there was a text box, and we asked you, tell us about your dog, and then ask us anything you would like to know about your dog. If that's an LLM behind there, it may make a recommendation to say, hey, this particular dog is at some risk of some problem in the future. But because we didn't train that model, I don't know how much I trust that output in that recommendation. And if somebody took advice from that to go change how they're raising their pet or caring for their pet or what they're feeding their pet, and that pet ended up getting sick or they perceived a problem with it, right? The question that we're wrestling with now is how much of a risk is it to us as a business to apply an LLM we didn't train that may give advice that we don't necessarily agree with or becomes problematic for the pet owner, right? And I think this is something we're investing a lot of energy now into starting to think about and think through and understand. We don't want to walk away from generative AI. I think that would be a bad decision, but we want to find that right balance of the benefits from the application of generative AI versus the potential risks of generative AI that might lend themselves to problems for pet owners, veterinarians, or other target users.
Mark, how did you solve this with the first set of AI models that you used, right? With that litter box, the early machine learning models, their interpretation of the pet's movement. How did you determine and how did you get the confidence that those
Yeah,
early models were right?
yeah, this is a great question. So, as a large pet food company, we're constantly developing new food products. We're constantly renovating existing products. We're constantly testing our products against competitive products. And the way we do that is, we make our test products in our pilot plant facilities, and then we feed them to dogs and cats who live in our pet care centers. And so I've got the luxury of having a population of many dogs and many cats who are completely under our care. Their day job historically has been testing food, but I've got them as a captive audience. And so now I can start to use them to generate training data. And if I put video, so for instance, if you imagine a cat in our pet care center with one of our prototype litter box monitor devices under its litter box, I can also have video camera on that cat's litter box, and I can record every time it's going to the bathroom. So now I have video data and sensor data in time series together. I can label that video data pretty readily. And so now I've got a really interesting set of supervised data. And if you multiply that not by one cat, but by many cats, hundreds of cats over months and months of time, now I've built a pretty powerful set of supervised training data that makes the data scientist job. They would get mad at me if I said it makes their job easy, but they get really excited about the quality of that training data set that we're able to give to them.
Very exciting. And so now, as you're using um, third-party LLMs, right, at this point for generative AI, for example, like the example you gave me, a chatbot to chat with your clients, you're still yet to see where it's getting that data from in order to make the recommendations. So, have you thought about RAG, the ability to ground these models in your own set of data before they give advice? Is
Yeah,
that
this is absolutely what we're starting to think about. I mean, I would say we haven't done a lot of work yet to understand how we do that, but I would imagine that's going to be part of our near term planning as we work to understand how do we generate the most value from these types of models.
makes sense? So, Mark, from everything you've spoken about today, couple of key things that I took away on how to build prototypes and how to go to market fast and how to make it successful, because a lot of prototypes we hear fail today in generative AI. And you actually have an AI based product that is successful and is bringing true value. And if you break it down, it sounds like it first started with that insight on pet health, which is where your whole journey began, right? And then the ability to actually not wait for anybody and go build your own low fidelity prototype and test it in your own cats and your own ecosystem, then kind of validated that insight. And from there you were able to build a momentum within your company and slowly show more and more success to the point where today you have a complete end product. So it sounds like that starting point of solving the right problem is quite important. And then also being able to rapidly build low fidelity prototypes to prove to people is also quite important. Um, did I miss out anything in terms of once you have those early proof points, in terms of taking it to actual production? Did you face challenges and issues? I don't think we discussed it, but is there anything on that front, beyond prototypes to production? Any insights you have to share as parting notes for the audience?
Yeah, I think you described it quite well. If there was one thing that I might build on to your comments, is that right? This It's a difficult journey for a company, again, that's very successful doing one thing to invest in and make decisions to go in other directions. And so it's not unusual for people in roles like mine, I think, to hear no or not yet or we're not ready for that or we don't know kinds of answers. And it's always important for me, and I spend time coaching and advising people in and around the work that I do, that you have to have a thick skin. And I think the way I often describe it is no never means no. No just means you haven't figured out how to get the yes yet. And so go back and try something different, right? And so don't be disappointed when somebody tells you no, and don't give up. If it's something that you believe in, just be creative in thinking about how can I flip the story and as an experiment to see if I can get closer to a yes and closer to a yes until I finally get the yes.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, I'm glad you got the yes because I am looking for more products from Purina for sure. And I think your company, thanks to these initiatives, is going to become one of the smartest companies in pet care going forward, right? You're going to have the AI, machine learning expertise and models that are going to learn way more about pets than we could have ever known. And so I'm looking for a co-pilot from Purina pretty soon, where I could chat with it and say, "Hey, how's my dog Maple doing? Tell me about her health." And the co-pilot from Purina tells me everything I need to know.
I
So
can't wait for you to have that co-pilot from Purina.
yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And also for our audience, this is a really nice story of Mark and his organization leveraging the power of artificial intelligence for something good, which is taking care of the health of our pets. So, Mark, thank you for sharing that story. Thank you for sharing your own journey with us. Been an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
You too.
Arvind, great interview as ever. Do you want to highlight some of the things that you thought really stood out from that interview?
Absolutely. Stuart, if you were following along the conversation, you see how important it is to talk to someone with real experience in a particular area, right? Like real world experience. Some of the insights that Mark has highlighted or brought out for us clearly came from doing what he's doing really well. So, three, four things stood out to me. So, as business leaders look at how to successfully build and take AI products to market for their industries, um, the first thing they need to consider is the flexibility between vision and the reality of the world, right? So you can clearly see in Mark's case that they had a high level vision, which was how do you leverage technology in the pet food industry to bring value to their customers, right? So they had this high level vision, but they were very open and flexible to understand how to do that and how to incorporate it. And as they went in to actually make that vision real, they had to pivot and pilot and learn many, many times, right? So having a clear vision, but then a very flexible way of delivering to that vision, I think is the first most important thing. And in building that flexibility and learning, we learned two things from Mark, which is the second major insight, which is that you need to have someone in the team who has a maker's mindset. That is the key. It isn't about the technology, it isn't about the process, it's about someone who has a maker's mindset. The thing that stood out to me most about what Mark said was that when they came up with an insight on what they should do with the technology and this particular pet food industry, he went the same night and built a prototype with his team, and next day morning they tested it, right? So that maker's mindset of, hey, I want to do something immediately. He didn't theorize, he didn't build presentations, he didn't do all this, heavy. They did some research in the beginning, but when it came down to it, he had the maker's mindset. And that mindset, I have to tell you, is not natural for most people. Most people love to theorize, most people love to take time, etc. In the business world, especially, right? It's such a cerebral world. So having someone in your team with the maker's mindset is really important. I think that was the second part of that. The third part was the innovation didn't start with technology. It actually started with a deep insight about the customer. So understanding your domain really well. Technologists understand technology, but you as a business leader, you need to understand your domain really well. And because they understood the needs of, um they did the research and understood what doctors were saying about pets, they were able to pick an insight that they could build on, right? So I think those three are really, really important. The last insight that came from Mark, which is relevant to this AI production, is it was clear in a story that if a human being has sat down and analyzed all the data and analyzed all the information they collected, they would have been limited in terms of the value they can add to their customers. But because they built AI models that analyze the data that pets they receive from these prototypes, they were able to have a lot more impact and they were able to provide a lot more insights to their customers. So you can clearly see that every business has the opportunity to train their own AI models and build their own AI models. That's super encouraging because that'll clearly differentiate you in the market as a business leader, right? So I think those are some of the key insights, Stuart. Took a little longer today for us to talk through it, but you know, I didn't want to. Mark's episode was awesome, and I needed to do some justice to that.
Absolutely, and it's great to see and hear people who are really getting stuck in and actually doing it, and we can all learn from that experience, I think.
Absolutely.
Well,
And just a quick shout out, right, Stuart, to Mark and Purina for showing us the journey they took, right? And really, what I love again, and because of the hedgehog story, you've got me into this, what I would say, altruistic mode, right? What I love about it is that it's a very clear story about how you use technology to improve the life of something or someone, right? In this case, Purina is improving the life of cats. I mean, you hear the stories, right, in terms of how they're using technology to understand the health of a cat, which is so important to a pet owner. So it's amazing. It's an awesome story. So kudos to Mark and Purina for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck to all the cats and hedgehogs, and everyone else in the animals too. All right, thank you so much, Arvind. It's been great talking to you as ever. Wonderful to have you with us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stuart.
If you like our podcast, please like, subscribe, or tell a friend. I'm Stuart Black. See you all next time.